Hello everybody, Skin Deep Beauty Vlogger here. I hope you're all really well. As you can probably tell by my barefaced appearance, today's video is going to be a first impressions review. I'm going to be trying out the Clarins True Radiance Perfect Skin Foundation with SPF 15. I'm going to be trying out shade 103, which is my shade. To give you a frame of reference, I'm around a MAC NC15. So it comes in a signature Clarins red box, and I'm going to pop it open. Apply it onto my face, check in throughout the day, and let you know how I feel that it's worn, whether there's been any oxidation, and just whether it delivers on the company's claims. So I actually really like the packaging. I think it looks extremely luxurious. It is glass, so it's pretty, I think it's glass. Yeah, that's glass. So pretty weighty, maybe not the best for travel. I mean, it is quite a bulky bottle anyway, but I just think that looks beautiful. It's got a nice sort of perspex square covering the gold lid, and a pump dispenser, which I'm always really pleased to see. So let's just see if there's any specific directions. Okay, all it says is apply prior to sun exposure. I'm going to be applying this using my Real Techniques buffing brush, which I'm just going to spritz with a little bit of water. That's just purely to be consistent with how I would normally apply a foundation. I just feel that it gives a nice fresh effect, and I've just prepped my skin following my usual skincare routine. So I'm going to pop a bit of this onto the back of my hand. I've got my mirror in front of me, so excuse me if I'm looking down a bit. My skin's not too bad at the moment. I've been having a bit of a breakout on my chin, but otherwise not too bad. Oh. Okay, first noticeable thing is that this has got the that signature Clarins scent that all of their foundations seem to have, which I personally am not the biggest fan of. I suppose you could describe it as fresh, but it's quite strong, and I'm not really a fan. So I'm going to buff this into the skin. Seems like a pretty good colour match, but that's no surprise because, you know, 103 in Clarins foundations is my shade. And I do like, with Clarins, I must say, that unlike some companies, such as Make Up For Ever and MAC, both of which I really like, Clarins are actually consistent with the colour names of their foundations across the board. So you only need to get colour matched once and you know that you're going to be the same shade, which is really helpful. Now, I know my shade in Make Up For Ever HD foundation, which is my holy grail, but the other foundations have different shade names. Same with Bare Minerals, same with MAC as well. I actually think this is quite a heavy coverage. I would say medium to full. And I don't know if you can tell, but it really does have a radiant finish. So if you like a dewy finish, then you're going to love this, I think, just on very first impressions. So it would be a good choice for those of you that maybe suffer from lack of radiance in your skin, maybe due to dryness. But if you like a matte finish, if you've got very oily skin, then I don't think this would be for you. Although you could, of course, use a mattifying primer underneath to sort of help balance out the effects a little bit. I think that's probably all that I need. I feel that the coverage is sufficiently full that I don't need to go in with lots and lots of layers. Sorry, I've just scraped my hair back and it looks a bit of a mess, but anyway, we will sort that out in a moment. But on first impressions, I like the coverage because I like a sort of medium to full coverage, which I would definitely describe this as having, and it really does live up to that True Radiance name in terms of the finish. I'm really quite surprised. I don't think I've tried such a radiant finish foundation, not for a long time at least, so bear that in mind. It really does live up to the name. I don't like the scent. I mean, I'm familiar with foundations from Clarins and I know they all have this scent, and either they wear down or I acclimatise to it, so it's not going to bother me for long, but it really isn't pleasant when I'm first applying it. It's not actually an offensive scent, it's just a very strong, fresh scent, and I don't personally like it. I'm going to go and apply the rest of my makeup. On first impressions, I think I like this. but I don't think you'd like it if you're very oily. I think the colour match is good, as I was expecting it to be. Blended well, it feels very comfortable on the skin. It doesn't feel like I'm wearing a lot of foundation. I do think it may have a little bit of a tacky finish, purely based on the fact that it's very radiant. But on first impressions so far, I think I like it. I'm going to go and apply the rest of my makeup, and I will check back in once I've done that so that you know what time it is, and if I've had any thoughts whilst applying the rest of my makeup. Okay, so I've applied the rest of my makeup products. I've gone for a sort of soft, wearable, daytime smoky eye, completely aside from the point. I think that my product's applied as normal. I really do quite like how this looks. I kept sort of looking at it while I was applying my makeup and thinking, yeah, I like the finish. I think it's, you know, very natural. It doesn't look dissimilar to, you know, the finish that I would normally go for. I really quite like it. So the time now is just coming up to 11 o'clock, so I'm going to check back in a few hours time and let you know my thoughts. But on very first impressions, thumbs up. I'm really liking this. It's 12:48, so I've been trialing the foundation for a couple of hours, and I thought that I would just drop in with a few thoughts so far. So far I'm really enjoying it. Whenever I sort of catch myself in the mirror, I've been thinking, like, actually I really like the finish of this, I really like how it looks, and so far I'm thinking, you know, I'd be quite happy to use this as an everyday foundation, you know, for the time being, particularly, you know, because it's easier to get hold of than my beloved Makeup Forever HD foundation, which I always feel like I'm wasting a bit if I use it on an everyday basis. That's not to say that I don't like this and I would use it up for the sake of it. It's more that I really like it. It's not quite, you know, Holy Grail 2 hours in at least, to the extent that my Makeup Forever HD is. So I like it enough that I would happily wear it instead of that and keep my Holy Grail one for sort of, well, just not an everyday basis. I'm noticing a little bit of oiliness coming through on my chin, which is where I'm most oily, and probably a little bit earlier than I normally would, but on the whole, really impressed with the results. And, you know, I would, if I wasn't doing this review, then I would simply go in and touch that up with a bit of powder, or I'd probably use a mattifying powder to set my makeup at the start of the day, just down the T-zone where I tend to get more oily, not so that it would take down the sort of true radiance effect of the foundation, but just enough to sort of set it and have a little bit of an oil control property to it. But otherwise, I'm really pleased, and, you know, that sort of radiant effect is staying true. It's wearing well, no oxidization. I'm really happy. It's coming up to 4 o'clock, and I've been wearing the Clarins foundation for quite a few hours now. Not as long as I would normally wear on, say, a work day, for example. So bear that in mind, but I figured now would be a good time to give you my final thoughts. So, as with all my first impressions videos, I'm going to tell you what I thought, just do a bit of a recap, and I'm also going to look up what the company claims that this does and tell you whether or not I agree with their claims. So I like the packaging. I think it's a bit bulky and probably not best for travel because of it being glass, but I think it looks beautiful, and I like the functionality of the pump dispenser. What's more, you can also see how much is remaining, so that's really good. And of course it's presented in the signature Clarins red box. I felt that the colour match was good. I'm shade 103, and I really like that Clarins colouring is consistent across all of their foundations. Now, this does have an SPF 15, and I haven't done any flash photography today, so I'm not sure if it would have flashback. The SPF is coming from titanium dioxide, so might be worth bearing in mind if, say, you were going to be photographed, if you were looking at this for maybe a wedding or a night out. Well, you don't really need SPF for a night out, but that might be something to bear in mind because you could have flashback as a result of that. Otherwise, I could take or leave the SPF inclusion because I use SPF in my skincare every single day anyway. I felt that this applied really quickly and easily because it's a sort of medium to full coverage. You know, I was able to just buff it into my skin using my Real Techniques buffing brush, and it blended easily. And it didn't really take too much work to get the desired effect. I didn't really need to layer it up, although I suppose you could do, but I think there's no need to. The only thing I didn't like about applying it was the scent, which you're going to get with all Clarins foundations. They all have that sort of fresh scent, which I find not offensive, but not the most pleasant. some people may like it. Everyone's different. In terms of the actual foundation and how it's performed, well, as soon as I applied it, I was like, wow, it really does live up to the True Radiance name. It's left a sort of glowy effect on my skin, and I really like it. I mean, you could probably get away without using highlighter with this product. I would probably be inclined to put mattifying powder along my T-zone, which is where I tend to get oily, and I particularly get oiliness around my chin, a little bit around my nose as well. Well, all through my T-zone, but those are the areas where it starts to show first, and I could definitely tell within a couple of hours that my chin was getting really oily, and that was sort of starting not necessarily to break down the product, but you could see the oil coming through. And now at, say, what are we on, like nearly 4 o'clock, it's very evident that I need a mattifying powder. I look greasy, and you know, it's not a good look, and it's not something that I normally experience with foundation. I do like the radiant effect. There's a difference between radiance and just looking a bit shiny and sweaty, which I think I look at the moment, and I'm not. It's just that all the oil is coming through my skin. And as I said, this has by no means been a trial for quite the extent of time that I would wear this on a daily basis, so that would be a major concern for me. Obviously, because it's a first impressions review, I haven't touched up throughout the day, so I could always, you know, reapply powder. I don't tend to touch up my makeup throughout the day as a general rule anyway. I might sort of go in with a little bit more concealer, but generally I don't, and I would definitely feel with this that I would need to, or I would need to use like an oil control powder. Having said that, I don't feel like the foundation's breaking down. I definitely feel like it's more that my oiliness is coming through, and I think the wear has been pretty good so far. Again, haven't worn it for the full amount of hours that I normally would, but it does have a high concentration of dimethicone, so there's no reason in my mind that it wouldn't be a long wearing foundation. It feels pretty lightweight on the skin. I think because I can sort of almost feel the greasiness in my skin, I'm at the point where I just want to wash my face or put some powder on or something. I don't really use blotting sheets, but if I did, I'd probably want to use them right about now. I mean, it's mainly in my T-zone. I think the rest of my face I can get away with it. Because it's a radiant finish, and I think you're going to get this with most radiant finish foundations, it's got a sort of tackiness to it, but it's not as bad as others I've tried, and I don't really feel like, you know, if I made a phone call it would leave a lot of residue on the phone like some can. I feel like I'm being quite negative about this, and I'm not meaning to, because I do like the overall look. I think the colour's good and it hasn't oxidised, and I like the finish apart from on my T-zone. So I think part of it is not necessarily user error, but the downside of it being a first impressions where it's not really true, because I would normally touch up with more of a mattifying powder, and I think it's worth bearing that in mind. If you've got oily skin, this probably isn't going to be the foundation for you, but then maybe you wouldn't go for something that's called True Radiance in the first place. I mean, I've got combination skin, and I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with a dewy finish. I quite like it. That's what I would normally go for. I think it's sort of quite a common sort of assumption that people with oily skin like automatically gravitate towards matte finish foundations, which I don't necessarily think is the case. I like a dewy finish, but I think this would be a lot better suited to somebody with normal to dry skin. Not so much because of the hydrating benefits, because I wouldn't say, I suppose my skin does feel hydrated, but not in the sense of the Extra Comfort foundation, which I've previously reviewed from Clarins, but more in terms of the finish and the fact that the oiliness is coming through. I don't feel like I'm explaining myself very well, so let's just look at what the company says this does, and I can tell you whether or not I agree. First up, I wanted to mention that this is only appearing to be available in 10 shades, which is kind of normal for Clarins. I don't think that's a particularly extensive range compared to sort of specialist beauty brands that, well, I know it's a specialist beauty brand, I mean makeup professional brands such as MAC and so on, that have a more extensive shade range. So this goes from shade 102 being the lightest. From what I can tell online, I could be wrong. In fact, it's not even 102, it's 102.5, which is porcelain. Unless there's lighter shades that aren't in stock, it would suggest that maybe there would be a 100 or a 101. But bearing in mind that I'm ivory at 103 and my skin is NC15 in MAC, I mean, I'm pale, but I'm not, you know, the palest person ever. So I think that's not really going too light. And then the deepest shade appears to be 114 Cappuccino, and I have no sort of benchmark against what that looks like. So I believe this launched around August time, and the quick description is the light infusing foundation brightens and corrects the complexion. Yeah, it is definitely light infusing, and it has a brightening, you know, light reflective property to it, which, yeah, I suppose it is going to blur the appearance of imperfections. And the fact that it's a medium to full coverage, you know, I barely needed to use much concealer at all. It says it's a lightweight moisturising formula that glides onto skin perfectly, boosting natural radiance and luminosity. So we've already discussed the luminosity claims. I did feel that it applied easily and was easy to blend. And yeah, it does feel lightweight on the skin. It feels, yeah, I can feel that there's a hydration and sort of tackiness there that tells me I've got something on my skin, but it doesn't feel heavy in the way that some sort of traditional thicker foundations can do. I'd feel very comfortable wearing this for an everyday basis. Reveals skin's natural luminosity with the anti-pollution action of moringa seed plant extract, so that's nice to know. I do really like that Clarins foundations seem to incorporate a skincare element to them as well, and you know, I really like Clarins skincare, so to me that's a real benefit. It boosts natural radiance with light reflecting pigments. Yeah. And according to the website, it gives 24-hour hydration, and then it's got a little disclaimer saying that that's an in vivo test on 11 women. So 11 women's not really that many, Clarins. Mind you, I'm just one person giving a review, so I'm not sure about this 24-hour hydration claim. It does feel hydrating on the skin. It's a water-based foundation. It says that it infuses the epidermis with moisture to leave it glowing with vitality. It's glowing, I think that's probably more down to the fact that it's got those light reflecting particles in it. I wouldn't be wearing my foundation for 24 hours, so I think it's a bit of a silly claim. I actually do think that this is it feels quite hydrating. You know, my skin doesn't feel like it's been sapped of moisture, and I have been in a room that's got artificial heating. I couldn't think of the word central heating. In terms of price, it is £27, and you get, I'm guessing 30ml, because most foundations are. Yes, 30ml. So £27 for 30ml, same price as my beloved Makeup Forever HD foundation. I don't love it as much as that, but I do actually really like this. I'm reluctant to give a full sort of conclusion to this trial because, as I keep saying, I feel like I need to try it with mattifying powder. I feel like I've sounded quite negative in this review, but on the whole I do actually really like it. I'm not sure that it's one that I can give a true first impression on, to be completely honest. I think I need to try it a couple of different ways and see how I can get this to work for me, because I do think it's a good foundation. I think it just needs a little bit of tweaking to the rest of my regime to get it to work. Hello everybody, I've been trying the Clarins True Radiance foundation for over a week now, and I don't normally do this in my first impressions videos because they are intended to be, as the name suggests, just my first impressions, but I felt that whilst I stand by the comments that I made in the rest of this video, I didn't feel that it was particularly a conclusive review, so I wanted to try this foundation a little bit longer and come back to you with some thoughts. And to be honest, I love this. It's really, really good, and don't be surprised if you see this in a favourite soon. I found that the best way to wear this is by setting it with the right type of powder. And so I just wanted to talk about 4 of the powders that I've been trying this with. Firstly, the Revlon Nearly Naked, which I normally really like, although I have sort of stated previously I think that it's not the best for oil control, and that really is apparent when paired with this foundation. It does not pair well, and I didn't feel that it added anything in terms of longevity, so I wouldn't recommend these two together, just because I did feel like I was getting a lot of breakdown in the foundation around where my oiliest areas are, which is sort of my chin. I also tried it with the e.l.f. High Definition Powder, which I liked. I thought that worked pretty well, and also with the Rimmel Stay Matte Powder, which is a little bit contradictory because you wouldn't necessarily consider pairing Stay Matte powder with a True Radiance foundation, but you know, you can just apply this through the T-zone, for example, and I felt that that combination worked pretty well and helped to sort of prolong the longevity of the foundation. The best powder that I found that worked in conjunction with the foundation was the Benefit Professional, and I felt like this duo worked really well. It didn't compromise the sort of finish of the foundation too much, although this does have a sort of mattifying effect, but I just placed this through the T-zone and it really helped to sort of prevent the foundation from breaking down in my oily areas, and just to prolong the longevity. So I think if you pair this foundation with the right powder, it can work really, really well, and I've just been enjoying it so much. I like that it's sort of got that True Radiance effect, and now that I've found a way of giving it a little bit more lasting power, I'm really, really impressed and would highly recommend this. I hope that you found that useful. Thank you for bearing with me to the end of this if you have. All the usual things apply. Give it a like if you've enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!